I can tell you just from 40,000 feet that some of the most damaging behavior on Wall Street, in some cases some of the least ethical behavior on Wall Street, wasn't illegal. That's exactly why we had to change the laws.
Welcome to Best Evidence. My name is John Titus, and you are watching the first episode in a new series, Murder of a Rebel Nation, which over the course of about 10 episodes is going to lay out the real coup d'etat in the U.S. The series is going to prove that a coup actually took place when Wall Street seized powers that legally cannot exist in a constitutional republic or under the rule of law. That's really what a coup is. I'll get into that in a bit. But the key event in the coup that actually took place in the U.S. was the TARP bailout of 2008. And because that bailout actually took place in October of that year, which was before the 2008 election, what that means is that the Obama administration, as well as every administration afterwards, has been subordinate to the people behind that coup. So let me explain why that is for a bit. Because a coup involves taking power illegally, it's the illegal seizure of total power. It is punishable by treason, punishable by death. And when you do that as a perpetrator of a coup, you do not then turn around and ask the people you just stole power from, please raise your hand and let's take a vote about whether you would like me to return power to you, the people. That is just not how things work. Once a coup takes place, there is one tried and true way for the people to get power back, and that is called revolution. Have you seen one of those lately? I have not. I see people not asking the right questions, if they're asking any questions at all. Now, it is arguable that there is one presidential administration after the Obama administration and before the Biden administration that did not get the memo about who is actually running the U.S. since the 2008 coup d'etat. And that generated quite a bit of friction between the actual powers in the U.S. and the guy imagining that he's the boss and that the president still has Article II powers, which the President of the United States has not had since 2008. On that note, let's take a closer look at that opening clip of Obama. That clip is from late 2011, and he is there trying to explain why his administration had not prosecuted a single Wall Street bank or a single major Wall Street bank executive. Listen carefully to what he says. It is a very slick piece of propaganda.
I can tell you just from 40,000 feet that some of the most damaging behavior on Wall Street, in some cases some of the least ethical behavior on Wall Street, wasn't illegal. That's exactly why we had to change the laws.
Some of the most damaging behavior wasn't illegal. So some behavior wasn't illegal and some behavior was illegal? Really? If that were actually true, Obama would have prosecuted the behavior that was illegal on Wall Street, but he never did. That's why he's sitting there, not because he thinks that some Wall Street behavior wasn't illegal. The White House position was that all Wall Street behavior wasn't illegal. But he can't come right out and say that because he knows it sounds ridiculous. So he's got to back into it, and he does that with, that's why we had to change the law. In other words, I, Obama, am really on your side. I'm here to help you, but I've got to come in and change your laws because they don't actually support a prosecution of Wall Street. That's the official White House position. It is total propaganda because it actually sounds reasonable until you get down and parse it and figure out what he's really saying. I doubt he even wrote that. Regardless, Obama delivers the message there with his trademark condescension. There's going to be no Wall Street prosecutions, and he made good on that promise. There were no Wall Street prosecutions on his watch. But the notion that Wall Street did not commit crimes is totally ridiculous. It is also objectively false. We know to a certainty that Wall Street perpetrated crimes because big banks themselves confessed to crimes like Bernie Madoff and pleaded guilty to felonies over and over and over again. Let's just start with HSBC. It is a major Wall Street bank. Though it is headquartered in London, it is a primary dealer, meaning it deals and trades securities directly with the New York Federal Reserve. It also dealt directly with drug dealers and terrorists whenever they needed to launder money. And that takes us to this clip. The date here is December 11th, 2012. This is Loretta Lynch. She is the prosecutor out of Brooklyn who is going after HSBC. Behind her is Lanny Breuer. We'll get to him in a minute. He is the number 2 law enforcer in the U.S. and head of the criminal division. But in any event, let's hear what Lynch has to say about HSBC's rash of crimes.
HSBC has admitted its guilt to the 4-count information filed today, which sets forth 2 violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, a violation of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, and a violation of the Trading with the Enemy Act.
I didn't hear her talk about needing to change any laws. Why is that? Because existing laws, by the admission of HSBC itself, were criminally violated. Obama was simply wrong about that. A second example of confessing to crimes under existing law involved another Wall Street bank, also headquartered overseas, also a primary dealer, and this has actually occurred 1 whole week after HSBC, December 19, 2012. And that bank, the second bank here, is UBS. I'll get to that in a minute. This here is Eric Holder. He is the Attorney General at the time. That is a cabinet position. So he is the number 1 law enforcer in the United States. Before I play this clip, though, I need to pause here because there is some hidden history that you need to know about concerning UBS and its prior connections to the very top of the DOJ. 7 months before UBS admitted to perpetrating its crimes, which we'll get to in a minute, Forbes ran an article about why no Wall Street banks and no Wall Street bankers had been prosecuted. The article is called Obama's DOJ and Wall Street Too Big for Jail. It is dated May of 2012. And by this time, Eric Holder here and Lanny Breuer had prosecuted thousands of small-time mortgage hustlers, but there were no prosecutions of Wall Street bankers who packaged and sold those mortgages. And this Forbes article is asking why that is. And way, way, way down in this article, we come to this little nugget. Covington & Burling, the firm from which both Attorney General Eric Holder and Associate Attorney General and head of the criminal division, Lanny Breuer, hail, and take a breath there. So Eric Holder and Lanny Breuer were partners in the same law firm, Covington & Burling, right before they came into the number 1 and number 2 slots in the DOJ. And as of May of 2012, this firm has as its current client Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, ING, Morgan Stanley, and yes, UBS and MF Global, among others. So the 2 takeaways from this little detour into hidden history is, number 1, the top 2 guys are partners in the same law firm, and number 2, that law firm represents all of Wall Street, including UBS. By way of that background, let's now cut back to Eric Holder and see if he needed to change the law in order to find that his own law firm's client, UBS, committed any crimes. Here we go.
Today, the Justice Department is filing a criminal information charging UBS Securities Japan, a subsidiary of the multinational financial institution UBS AG, with felony wire fraud for engaging in a scheme to manipulate the London Interbank Offered Rate, or LIBOR, a key benchmark for financial products and transactions around the world. The company has agreed to plead guilty to this charge, to admit to its criminal conduct, and to pay a $100 million fine.
Well, how about that? A partner in Wall Street's go-to law firm says there was criminal wire fraud in rigging LIBOR, the biggest, most important interest rate in the world, covers something like $30 trillion in contracts annually, And yet the President of the United States says there was no crime on Wall Street, and that's why we need to change the laws. So Obama's claim on 60 Minutes is false about 6 ways from Sunday. He said Wall Street's not in jail because they didn't commit any crimes. They didn't do anything illegal. That's actually false. They did. They admitted they did. We just saw that. Obama also said, hey, we need to change the laws to get these guys. That, too, is false. The Trading with the Enemy Act that nailed HSBC, that's an old statute. It goes back to World War I. The wire fraud statute that nailed UBS goes back to the early 1950s. The mail fraud statute actually goes back to the Civil War. The point here is that it wasn't the law that was the problem. It was the law enforcers working on behalf of their firm's clients that was the problem. It's called not enforcing law against admitted criminals for profit. And it wasn't just HSBC and UBS. It was all of Wall Street that had become a criminal cesspool by the time of the global financial crisis. Now, why do I say that? Let me explain that. By the time of the global financial crisis, the U.S. had transformed from being an economy based on manufacturing to an economy based on financial engineering. And that's a huge deal when it comes to fraud in a debt-based monetary system. What do I mean by that? In a debt-based monetary system, as I have discussed on this channel many times, money gets created when banks lend, but banks only lend against collateral for the most part. There's some unsecured debt, but far and away, money gets created as debt, and it gets created as secured debt. So if you want a loan, you got to put collateral. That's the rule. In a manufacturing economy, that's fine because the collateral tends to be real stuff. It's a plant, it's raw materials, it's commodities, it's a viable business, making real things with real equipment. You want to know if collateral is real in a manufacturing economy? Easy. Walk up to the factory, see the cars in the parking lot, look at the power meter whirling around on the side of the building. Yep, they're making real shit. The collateral's real. Everything's good. It is a much different situation in an economy based on financial engineering. You want to know if a mortgage-backed security is real? Good luck. You got to read through 5,000 mortgages. You got to cross-check the mortgages versus the trust documents. You got to see if all 5,000 promissory notes even made it into the trust. Whoops, it turns out only 1,600 made it into the trust at the time that mortgage-backed security was sold. And you conclude after 1,000 hours of document review and maybe 2 minutes of legal research that the whole mortgage-backed security, the whole 5,000 mortgage package is fraudulent and the collateral is worth nothing. Think about that for a second. Think about it from the bank's point of view. Deposit account money is a liability backed by an asset, backed by collateral. If that collateral drops to zero, that means somewhere there's a bank eating that loss. And eventually the whole system goes bankrupt. In other words, in a financialized economy, collateral fraud is just keystrokes away from the fingers of greedy Wall Street coke addicts with the world's hugest egos. You want to know how big that problem was? Well, just take the example of our mortgage-backed security. You've got a mortgage-backed security with 5,000 mortgages in it, times $200,000 per mortgage, equals $1 billion in new money, but that money is resting on $0.00 in collateral. So, $1 billion times the number of cokeheads on Wall Street, times the number of lines they honked up, times the number of deals they did over the number of days, equals a Great Depression. That's the global financial crisis. You have trillions of dollars sloshing around with nothing but coke dust under it. Fraudulent collateral was the crisis. And insiders damn well knew it. You think I'm kidding about that? You don't need to take my word for it. Take it from Alan Greenspan, who has a textbook senior moment of clarity right in front of the worst poker face on earth, Ben Bernanke. This is a Federal Reserve conference here in 2011. You got Alan Greenspan here on the right. He is 85 years old here and appears to be sitting next to a glass of wine. I'm not sure whether it was a senior moment or whether it was in vino veritas. What he's about to say is just amazing. But when he does it, look at this guy. This is Ben Bernanke. He is the Federal Reserve Chairman at the time. And Alan Greenspan is he's talking about Lehman Brothers. He's talking about exactly what I was just talking about. capital that is worthless due to fraud. I want you to watch Bernanke closely when Greenspan lets loose with this massive truth bomb. Even the moderator here, watch the moderator too. He gets nervous too. The cameraman gets nervous. This whole clip is just incredible. Let me just roll it. You can see what I'm talking about.
All capital that I see is the problem, and I'm not saying there are lots. I think there was rampant fraud in a lot of what was going on in these markets. But my general judgment is that there are two fundamental reforms that we need: is to get adequate capital, and two, to get far higher levels of enforcement of fraud statutes. Existing ones, I'm not even talking about new. Things were being done which were certainly illegal and clearly criminal in certain cases, which, I mean, fraud is a fact. Fraud creates very considerable instability in competitive markets. If you cannot trust your counterparties, it won't work. And indeed, we saw that it didn't.
You get all that? What Wall Street did was certainly illegal, clearly criminal. There was rampant fraud. So Obama's wrong about all that. And oh, by the way, did you catch that? Existing laws were violated. Greenspan says you don't need any new laws. He's directly rebutting what Obama said. He's just saying, just enforce existing laws, Obama. Alan Greenspan there describes the entire global financial crisis caused by collateral fraud. And Bernanke's body language confirms that Alan Greenspan is exactly right about that. Now, if you were a Wall Street bank that had systematically perpetrated criminal fraud, who would you want making decisions about prosecutions at the top of the DOJ once the collapse happens? How about two partners from our corporate criminal defense law firm? Which is exactly what happened. We just saw that. But if you really had that kind of power, in other words, if you really had enough power to instruct the U.S. president on who his cabinet would be, it would really mean that he works for you and not the other way around. And you could give him other instructions too, like, hey, go on TV, lie to the people we just stole $18 trillion from, tell them my name is Mr. Helper and I'm here to change your laws to nail those bad guys on Wall Street because we just can't prosecute them under existing laws. Which is exactly what happened. We just saw that. This brings me to one of the main points of this whole series. There was a coup d'etat in the U.S. before Barack Obama set foot into the White House as a chatty Cathy with Wall Street pulling the end of his string, telling him exactly what to say. But at this point, I really want to clear up some confusion over what a coup d'etat is. A coup d'etat is about people with legitimate and pre-existing sovereign power, the classic example being a military general, leveraging his legitimate power, his pre-existing legitimate power, into a total takeover of the government. In 2008, though, that pre-existing power wasn't military in nature. It was money and credit creation. Just look at Article 1 of the Constitution. Money and credit creation is a sovereign power. And Wall Street said in 2008, you give us what we want, or we'll create Armageddon in the streets of the U.S. That's very well documented. A coup is not rowdy tourists busting up furniture and taking selfies in government offices. Those people, even if I credited that story as true, even if I accepted the whole thing as absolute fact at face value, those people had no power at all, which is why they were there in the first place. In fact, some of them have been prosecuted. Have Wall Street executives been prosecuted? Have Wall Street banks been prosecuted? Nope, not since Obama took office, because in a real coup d'etat, the people who grab power put themselves beyond the reach of the law. That's the point of a coup, a real one anyway. It's about being free to commit whatever crimes you want with total impunity, which, as I say, has been going on since Obama's first term. In the next episode, I'm going to prove beyond any doubt that a coup took place in 2008. I'm going to lay it out. And after that, I'm going to lay out the criminal power structure in the U.S. I've created a new playlist called MORN, M-O-R-N, for Murder of a Rebel Nation. New installments of this series are going to go there. It won't be in the next video. In the next video, I'm actually in the process of moving right now. That's why the studio looks quite a bit different. But the next video, I'm going to talk about 3 wins this channel has registered against the Federal Reserve. One's old, one is within the last year, and the last one, the third one's very recent. And I want to talk about those. I hadn't really thought about it until recently when I was starting to make this move. I thought about the history of this channel, like, wow, done pretty well here. I'll lay that out. But in any case, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time in a much different background.
Well, I didn't know you wanted to get involved with the discussion, Mr. Helper.